I've gotten some emails about how did you establish criteria. Well, we established criteria in no particular order of significance, but we know our school board shared with us, and it's pretty obvious. We have 5 schools north of Poplar. We have 0 schools south of Poplar Pike. So the first priority was, let's try to put a facility south of Poplar Pike. And so that was one of our criteria. The other criteria was, if you're looking for a K through 5 or a K through 8, you need 20 to 30 acres of approximate land range to be able to make that happen. In our community, we've made the investment of all of our elementary schools have adjoining parks, and so we don't want to break that tradition. We want playing fields and ball fields, but we also want public parks so people's siblings can come if they're not of school age and be there and wait for their older brother or sister when school lets out. So that magic figure is closer to 30 acres than 20, but 20 to 30 acres was also a criteria. We also looked at availability of land and whether it was on the market. The old saying is, if you're in real estate, you've got to have a motivated and willing buyer and seller. They've got to be active, and they got to want to buy, and they got to want to sell. If you approach someone and they don't have a for sale sign in their yard, you can still approach them, but if they don't want to sell, you don't have the 2 parties that make that a criteria. The fourth thing we looked at was cost, and we knew that $1 to $3 million seemed to be somewhere in our range. And this, again, these are in no particular order of significance. The fifth thing we looked at is proximity to existing schools. We have 3 schools in more or less the central part of Germantown that are the heritage schools. They're all within roughly 1 square mile of each other. 2 are on 1 campus. Building a new school next to 3 existing schools makes for an awkward situation, to say the least. So we looked at proximity to existing schools as well. A 6th thing that we looked at was the ease of development, or the challenges to develop. Those include access, drainage, utilities, topography, whether the railroad was nearby, and whether there needed to be a public crossing of a railroad. And the 7th and final thing we looked at was the opportunity for a neighborhood to grow and residential growth. Cameron, I'm not sure if you can go back to the previous slide that has just the vacant land. Good, that way I can catch my breath too. So if you look at that right there, that's pretty vacant. The map that Patrick shared with you earlier was not as stark as this one. It was more of a diagram, but you could see that basically the land was not developed at Houston High, Houston Middle area. So there's a world of opportunity to put hundreds of rooftops near an elementary. I think we can all pretty much rest assured that bringing schools to an area tends to bring rooftops, development opportunities, and residential growth. It's not always the case, but it has been in Germantown. As Ms. Parker alluded to, the growth of our school districts, buildings were built and rooftops followed. So those